Lovely. Thanks very much, Tim. Thanks very much, Jenny. Isn't it great to see those pictures? I'm a visual person myself, and it's lovely to see those images. Really helps really pull together everything that's been discussed yesterday and will be discussed over the next couple of days. It's lovely to see such a great array of people. Unfortunately, I was unable to be here yesterday due to another conference, but some great friends and colleagues from over the years I can see on the screen. So hopefully we'll get to chat later. And Duncan, I hope you appreciate the Sept shirt I've got on today. I've covered myself with insects, and I know you, especially for you, of course. I'm Paul Beals. My passion really for plant health, I guess, started, I was looking back at some 35mm, this shows my age really, slides a while ago, and I found a picture of me aged just about 1.5, looking at the underside of a rhododendron leaf, and I'm sure I was just checking out for rhododendron powdery mildew, which is where sort of my career developed. I did my PhD in rhododendron powdery mildew, in fact, some many years later, and then I moved to what was Central Science Laboratory and worked there as a plant diagnostician. A great, fantastic opportunity to delve into the whole world of plant diseases, primarily fungal diseases, which are obviously the best ones. And it was just a great time to do that, carry out research and that. And then since then, I moved to the Animal Plant Health Agency, and I work within the plant health and seed inspectorate there. Again, working in areas where we're taking some of those things that have been developed from the labs across the world, really, and bringing them out into the field and really actually using those things sort of in anger, really. But also I have a fantastic team I work with who are involved in engagement activities. So we have a great opportunity to get out and talk with people, to do some of these big events, these shows and that, and engage with people. And also involved in like the training aspects of within plant health, within our inspectorate itself. But that's enough about me. I'm here primarily really to introduce, and I have a real privilege to be able to introduce a couple of speakers who are coming up now. We've got two Chief Plant Health Officers, Professor Nicola Spence and Dr. Gerry Sadler, with us today. Now, Nicola, she is DEFRA's Chief Plant Health Officer, and she's the Deputy Director for Plant and Bee Health, and the head of the National Plant Protection Organisation for the UK. So the role of the Chief Plant Health Officer involves advising ministers, industry and others about the risks posed by plant pests and diseases. She also ensures that measures are in place to manage those risks and minimise their impact, as well as leading the operational response in the event of disease outbreak. Although plant health is a devolved matter, the Chief Plant Health Officer coordinates the UK response to international plant health matters and takes the lead on national plant health emergencies, of which we've had a few over the years. Nicola's an experienced research plant pathologist, and she's worked on virus diseases and horticultural crops in the UK and internationally for many years now. She's an expert in plant health and on international plant trade. And she was previously the head of plant health and then the chief scientist at FERA. She's recently completed a tenure as the president of the British Society of Plant Pathology. She is a fellow of the Royal Society of Biology. She's a visiting professor of Harper Adams University and member of the court at the University of York, and a trustee of Yorkshire Arboretum. She's got degrees in botany and higher degrees in microbiology and plant virology as well. She's had numerous media appearances, including Today programme, Countryfile, Farming Today, and she's also represented Birmingham University on the Christmas University Challenge. So that's Nicola. We also have we've got Gerry here as well. And Gerry, he's the Chief Plant Health Officer for Scotland and also the head of SASA. He completed his PhD in bacterial systematics at Newcastle University and worked for 4 years in the pharmaceutical industry in Switzerland and in Italy before deciding that antibiotic discovery was not for him. He returned to the UK and he worked for 12 years at Cabby Bioscience down in Egham, where he provided the diagnostic service for bacterial plant pathogens for developing countries. And his research efforts were primarily focused on the bacterial pathogens of potato, such as Ralstonia solanacearum. He then left Cabby to join SASA, which is a division of the Scottish government, and is responsible for oversight of the arable agriculture in Scotland. He's maintained his interest in bacterial pathogens of potatoes and has been at SASA now for over 20 years. More recently playing more of a leadership management type role. So he's going to give us an overview of plant health issues, primarily as they impact Scotland. But for now, I will pass you straight over to Nicola. Nicola and Gerry, they're just going to deliver their talk for now. There'll be an opportunity for delegates to ask their questions. I think there's a session at about 4:30 this morning. So what I do encourage you to do is, whilst they're speaking, think about the questions that you might like to ask and pop them into the chat as we're going on. And I'm sure Tim and Gerry will be up there. Jenny will be up there scrolling pictures and making some lovely new images for us. So without further ado, over to you, Nicola. Thank you very much, Nicola.
Thanks very much, Paul, and thanks for the introduction. Great to see everyone. And as Paul explained, my role in DEFRA is Chief Plant Health Officer, so very much a policy maker these days. So I'm just going to share my screen with you. It's a great pleasure to talk to you today. And I thought I'd just try and explain, first of all, how the UK plant health regime works. So we have the UK Plant Health Service, which DEFRA leads as the head of the National Plant Protection Organisation. As Paul said, policy has devolved, so we work closely with the Welsh, Scottish and Northern Ireland Assembly. And we also have a number of partners in delivery, Forestry Research, FERA, SASA, etc. But we also sit under the umbrella of the WTO, the World Trade Organization, and the IPPC, the International Plant Protection Convention. And since we left the EU in January, we have that direct link to IPPC and WTO. And my role as Chief Plant Health Officer, I sort of sit really at the heart of policy making, but also coordinating operations and evidence and analysis to allow us to do our job. And you heard earlier the summary of your discussions and deliberations yesterday of the many C's. Well, plant health is all about the P's. There are 5 P's that we think about. That is predicting plant health risks, preventing them from arriving in the UK, protecting plants, trees, the economy, the environment if they do arrive, being prepared to deal with an outbreak, and finally partnership. So those are the kind of principles that we work to. And all of our policies are set out in these documents that are shown there. The Plant Biosecurity Strategy, the 25-year Environment Plan, and the Tree Health Resilience Strategy. And I know that you'll all be aware that plant health, the health and well-being of plants and trees is very much in the public interest, and the media are very interested in what we're doing. So the partnership aspect of this and the communication is incredibly important. And why is it so important? Well, this slide shows the value at risk. We've tried to monetize the value of healthy crops and forestry, food exports, and also the importance of the environment. And particularly as we've seen during the last year, people really valuing open spaces, gardens, even window boxes, indoor plants, anything living, connecting with nature has been incredibly important to health and well-being. And I think, we really haven't estimated that nearly enough. And the asset value of our trees and forests is huge. So we are protecting all of that value to society, which is why plant health has a very high priority with our ministerial team. And yesterday you heard from Lord Gardner, who has responsibility for plant health and is really passionate about it, as are we all. And the reason for this is the risk is increasing. And over the last 100 years, we've seen an acceleration in the arrival of pests and pathogens. This is driven by climate change, global movements in plants, plant products, and people, of course, that move these plant products. So the way in which we try and predict what's out there and what might happen is through the UK Plant Health Risk Register. So this is a database which was developed by the Plant Health team in DEFRA and also in collaboration with all of our delivery partners. It's hosted by FERA. And this is a completely open, downloadable, searchable database where you can look for pests and pathogens and find out, what the issue is. We horizon scan globally for new and emerging pests, and we've got around about 1,200 on the risk register at the moment. They are reviewed on a monthly basis through the UK Plant Health Risk Group, and then I have a monthly meeting with ministers to advise them if there are new and emerging threats or changes in current threats. And then we decide what to do. Are we going to regulate? Are we going to do research? Do we need to target publicity to industry or the public, etc.? So it's an incredibly valuable tool. And we have a huge amount of expertise in the UK Plant Health Service to help make sure that this is accurate and meaningful, because the cost of disease outbreaks is enormous. Here's a few examples where we've tried to estimate the cost, for example, of the Asian longhorn beetle outbreak in Kent in 2015. We think that will have cost about £2 million. We've now declared it eradicated. We had surveillance ongoing so that we could do that, but obviously very costly. We had to fell 2,000 trees to deal with that outbreak. And then ash dieback has been estimated that it may cost 15 billion over the next 100 years. And the ongoing costs of managing diseases such as Phytophthora. So it's always better to keep diseases out. It's very costly if they become established. And here are 3 of our most unwanted pests for the future: Xylella fastidiosa, and there's actually a Xylella Awareness Week going on at the moment. So if you get any times to dip out and have a look at that, I think you'll find that really useful. Emerald ash borer, an exotic pest of ash, and plain wilt or canker stain of plain. These are things that we must try and keep out. Unfortunately, some pests and diseases have arrived, and we're currently dealing with 3 outbreaks. In Kent, we've got the European spruce bark beetle, although we think we've eradicated the breeding populations, but we're still trapping it. We think it's flying over the channel. We've got some outbreaks of sweet chestnut blight that we're trying to eradicate, and developing really novel research to try and manage and suppress that disease. And then incursions of oak processionary moth. There's an ongoing outbreak in West London, which is established, but we've had a massive effort to intercept several introductions on oak a couple of years ago and eradicated them from all of those sites. And then we've got the diseases which are well established: Phytophthora, acute oak decline, and ash dieback, where we're investing in research to try and manage the impacts of those diseases. And that is a huge ongoing effort for all the agencies across the UK. We carry out a lot of nursery inspections, working with industry to try and sort of help them manage plant health risks. And this has increased dramatically since we left the EU because the statutory action on a much larger number of tree species, for example, now happens in material that comes from the EU. So a lot more work for our inspectors. And that also includes surveillance in the wider environment. This is Ben Jones from the Forestry Commission. That's not his helicopter, but every year we fly a helicopter across the tree canopy throughout the UK looking for signs of disease in the canopy. And then we can send inspectors to ground truth any sort of findings of suspicious looking pests or diseases in our trees. We also carry out a number of surveys for a range of other pests and diseases. So there's a huge, intense, well-coordinated program of work to try and prevent things from arriving or deal with them if they do get here. And then we also work together very closely with lots of organisations. This came together last year in National Plant Health Week, where we had a campaign, #Healthy Plants, Healthy Minds, with lots of organisations such as the RHS, the Horticultural Trades Association. That was part of our International Year of Plant Health promotion. We launched Izzy the Inspector, an activity booklet that you can see there. This was written and illustrated by members of our own plant health service. So that was a fantastic effort. We launched it. You can download it there. Brilliant if you're trying to teach your children about plant health in lockdown. And it's been translated into Welsh as well as being available in English. And we've got plans for Izzy this year. We're hoping to go global with Izzy because she's been such a success. We launched the Plant Healthy Standard, a biosecurity standard with industry, and we're now seeing lots of kind of major plant suppliers becoming accredited in biosecurity. And then we have ongoing campaigns about not bringing back pests and diseases and keeping it clean when you visit woodlands and so on. So a lot of awareness raising, working with the public and working with volunteers who are really passionate about plant health. So the next steps are we are preparing at the moment a refreshed GB plant health biosecurity strategy. We'll be having formal consultation in a few months, and then we'll be hoping to launch this later in the year. So actually your contributions during this conference, I think, will be really helpful in helping us think about what our new strategy should deliver. We're also very busy looking at future import regimes and exports, trying to open up new export markets for UK produce. International plant health is still continuing, and we're doing quite a lot of activities. And then we're looking to COP26 in Glasgow later this year, and how might we raise the issue of biosecurity and climate change amongst the public. And of course, RHS Chelsea is always somewhere where we do a lot of public communication. It's been postponed from the normal May spot to September, and we're hoping to be very much involved in that. All this information is available at the UK Plant Health Information Portal, so I encourage you to look there. And also I'm on Twitter @PlantChief, so give me a follow, and I'd love to connect with you on social media. So I think that is all from me, and I'm now going to hand over to Gerry.
Okay, thanks, Beth. Okay, so thanks, Nicola. Sorry about that. Obviously, the string between you guys and Scotland was obviously a bit stretched today. So I'd just like to build on what Nicola said, and also establish really with you that because plant health is a devolved matter, really, and we have responsibility for plant health within Scotland, we are very much part of the UK Plant Health Service. So in some respects, I suppose what I'm going to do is maybe sort of give you a little bit finer detail really on some of what Nicola said, and put it into a Scottish context. So one of the key things, I suppose, that when I started my job was, I suppose, that having to recognise really that Scottish agriculture and forestry is actually quite different really to other parts of the UK, and in some respects this is highlights really the focus of our work. So if I could have the next slide, please, Beth. So just to maybe give you a few examples, this is from some work that was done a couple of years back, looking at the significance really of particular agriculture and horticultural crops to Scotland. And you can see that when we compare some of these crops, both for Scotland and to the rest of the UK, that you know, there are certain things which are highly significant. So if you look at agriculture in general, Scotland probably produces somewhere in the region of about 12 to 15% of the UK's agriculture and horticultural output. And I've just given you a few examples of crops where, I suppose, for want of a better description, Scotland punches above its weight. I mean, barley is obviously incredibly important crop for us because of our whisky industry. Soft fruit, particularly strawberries, is a major, are produced majorly really up the east coast of Scotland, and particularly in Angus and along the Tay in between Dundee and Perth. And probably one of the big significant crops for us is seed potatoes. So 72% of the UK's seed potato production takes place here in Scotland. So this just highlights some of the areas that we tend to focus on in Scotland, because clearly they are of significance really to our agriculture. If I could have the next slide, please, Beth. And again, forestry is probably where Scotland really does punch above its weight, and particularly with regards to some of the commercial species such as Sitka spruce and lodgepole pine. And Nicola's already mentioned the outbreak which is being controlled really in Kent at the moment of the spruce bark beetle, and this would be something which would be incredibly worrying for us if that beetle was to make its way to Scotland, just because obviously Scotland has 77% of the UK's spruce population. So again, this just to highlight the fact that we are part of the UK Plant Health Service, but we do have specific responsibilities, and we do have particular focus on plant species which are of significance both for our agriculture, horticulture and forestry. So if I could have the next slide, please. Nicola's also touched on already Phytophthora ramorum, which is a major pest. And I think if you could cast your mind back to the map that she showed of the UK, it showed an area in the southwest of Scotland which is a management zone for this particular pathogen, Phytophthora ramorum. And again, this is an aerial shot taken from a helicopter by our colleagues in Scottish Forestry, and it shows the patches of spruce trees which have been decimated by this particular pathogen. So we are talking about something that has huge significance and real world impact, both financial and also to our landscape, because of its spread, and obviously because of the wetter climate that we have down the west side of the country. Really, this is why the pathogen sort of spreads so well under the right sort of conditions, really, which obviously we have really on the southwest coast of the country. So if I could have the next slide, please. And as Nicola's already mentioned, the challenge, if you like, from plant pests and diseases is increasing as a result of trade, internet shopping, travel and tourism, but also as a result of the fact that there is a trend, I suppose, across Europe, and certainly even though that we have now left the European Union, it's still with us, to reduce our pesticide usage. And clearly, these chemicals are one of the major ways that we have tended to combat or control pests and diseases in the country. So that reducing portfolio, or the restrictions which are placed on our chemical usage, although has many benefits in terms of the environment and in terms of human health, also sort of is going to present us with production problems sort of going into the future. And then on top of that, we have climate change to contend with as well. So if I could have the next slide, please, Beth. Just to give you a few examples about some of the things that we confront. So this is a wooden bowl that was bought in a TK Maxx shop in Edinburgh, and you can see on the left-hand picture a beetle, and if you look a little bit further down, there's actually a hole where the beetle emerged from. So as a result of trade with other parts of the world and fairly innocuous things like wooden serving bowls, there is a possibility that particular pests could be introduced into the country as a result of that trade. So just to give you an example about some of the things that we confront, I wouldn't say on a daily basis, but certainly on a regular basis, as a result of the fact that increasingly we're trading with other parts of, from basically all parts of the world, that the risks that we run as a result of that trade. If we could have the next slide, please. And here's another example about a possible way that particular pests and pathogens could be actually introduced into the country. So just to give you a bit of a background, the Arandora Star was a passenger ship during the Second World War that was used to transport, what's the word I'm looking for, detainees who were either Italian or German origin at the beginning of the war. That was destined to actually take them from the UK over to Canada. It was torpedoed by a German U-boat and sank. And my recollection is there was about 300 Italian people, mostly of Scottish or Italian-Scottish origin, really died as a result of that. So as a result of that, there's been a memorial garden that was created in Glasgow Cathedral a few years back. And when the garden was being constructed, the people of Tuscany gifted a 200-year-old olive tree to Glasgow Cathedral to act as a centerpiece for this memorial. And as you're probably all well aware, olive is a major host of pathogens such as Xylella fastidiosa. So even from the best of intentioned gifts, really, there is a possibility that something which would be unwanted in our country could actually be introduced. So again, it's building on this idea, really, that I suppose that we have to maintain vigilance and be aware of the fact that you know, pests and diseases could arrive in the country really sort of through quite different means. So could I have the next slide, please? And again, you know, as I've already mentioned, vigilance is key to the work that we do. And within SASA, we have a range of horticulture and marketing unit inspectors who are inspecting material which comes into the country on a regular basis. So this is one of my colleagues working in the Glasgow Fruit Market. If we could have the next slide. So I think it's also important that not only do we monitor the country for, if you like, things that could be introduced, that we also have to manage things which are already here. Again, this is one of my colleagues from our horticultural and marketing unit inspection team examining an oak tree that obviously has a bleeding canker, which is likely to be caused by a range of different Phytophthora species. And again, all of our work is backed up by our team of diagnosticians that work in the lab at SASA. And again, you know, just to emphasize really the fact that we work very collaboratively. We work very closely with our colleagues in FERA and indeed APHA, and there's a great what's the word I'm looking for, but a great sort of support mechanism really that exists really between us in terms of training or in terms of using each other really to help out really with particular areas of if we need help in diagnostics or if we have particular volumes of testing which we can't cope with really. So there is that sort of mutual sort of support system that exists really sort of within the UK and the plant health services. If we could have the next slide, please. So not only is it important that you know, we monitor things which are coming into the country, we manage things which are already here, but it's also quite important that we don't export any of our problems to other parts of the world as well. So I'm not sure if you're aware, but Scotland exports a great deal of narcissus bulbs to particularly places like the Netherlands and the US. This is one of my colleagues in a horticulture and marketing unit inspectorate, inspecting a field of narcissus to sort of ensure that it's free of particular sort of pests and diseases. So again, you know, we have a responsibility as a global trading nation to ensure that when we export plant material, that we don't export our problems to other parts of the world. If I could have the next slide, please. So like Nicola's already mentioned, and this was similar really to the GB, Scotland also has its own plant health strategy, which is embedded within the GB plant health strategy. And again, it pulls out some of the sort of the particular features really of Scotland that we have to be pay attention to. So obviously the makeup really of the plants which are grown commercially and also in our natural environment. As part of the strategy back in 2016, that led to my appointment and also sort of more crucially, really the establishment of Scotland's Plant Health Centre, which I'll say a little bit more about in the next few slides. But really it commits to a coordinated collaborative approach. So again, as I've already mentioned, we are definitely an integral part of the UK Plant Health Service, but it's very much sort of promoting also this partnership working. So it's not just about what government can do for business and the wider public, it's also us working together really to sort of ensure that we maintain the plant health really both in the farmed and the natural environment really of the country. So if we could have the next slide, please. And, you know, as I've already mentioned, that one of the key features really of the Scottish Plant Health Strategy was the establishment of its own Plant Health Centre. So this really was a virtual centre which brought together scientists really in the two main institutes in Scotland, the SRUC and also the James Hutton Institute, but also brought together sort of colleagues in forestry and indeed other institutes across the UK. And the idea was it was to allow government really to have almost an early warning system, or a horizon scanning system, really, to look out across the world and to see sort of what problems are out there and how we need to sort of best prepare for them. So it's very much a complementary sort of initiative, really. It wasn't designed to reinvent any wheels. It was designed to bring sort of expertise together and to help us construct a horizon scanning function, really, sort of within the country. So could I have the next slide, please? And this just goes on in a little bit more detail, really, to say the work of the Plant Health Centre, which has now been running for 2 years. Again, as I mentioned, it's about horizon scanning, but it also provides short-term evidence, really, for our policy team. It prioritises the sort of pests and diseases which are specific for Scotland, and it strengthens, really, our surveillance and our emergency response. So if I could have the last couple of slides, just to give you an example, really, of some of the work that's already done. We've already talked about Xylella. One of the functions, really, that the Plant Health Centre has done is come up with a risk map, really, for Scotland, and which has done things like, it's looked at how Xylella is likely to be introduced into the country, and the most likely way is it's going to come in on horticultural plants, which are going to be sold in garden centres, or to come in as a forestry productive material. That's what FRM stands for. So we've mapped the location, really, of all of these centres or nurseries, really, across Scotland. We've overlaid that with the spread, if you like, of susceptible hosts, and it gives us an idea, actually, of where the areas of the country are of greatest risk if a pathogen such as Xylella was ever to be introduced into the country. So this is just to give you one example about how we've used the Plant Health Centre to add value to the work that we've already done, to actually target our surveillance, really, and to sort of, you know, improve our contingency planning into the future. And I think that's the last. I've got maybe one more slide, and I think that's about it. Yeah. So that's basically it. So just to reiterate a few things I've said, Scotland is very much part of the UK's plant health surveillance system, very much part of the UK Plant Health Service team. We work collaboratively, but clearly we have areas that we have specific concern about because of the nature of the plant mix that we have here, and I suppose the innovative way that we're using the limited funds that we have available to create such a thing as the Plant Health Centre to allow us to do better horizon scanning into the future. So I think that's probably it for me. Thanks, everyone.